Welcome to the Quickshow tutorial chapter 11 on using DMX with Quickshow. Quickshow works with an N-Tech USB DMX Pro USB device. It's a DMX dongle type device where you can connect it to the USB connection on the computer and then connect it to either a DMX lighting board and feed DMX signals into Quickshow, or you can connect it to a DMX lighting device such as a dimmer pack or moving light fixtures, fog machines, and other things like that. Once you've acquired a N-Tech USB DMX Pro device, you activate DMX for input or output here on the Settings menu. Just click Settings, DMX Settings, and we can choose either DMX input or output. When you select DMX input, you'll have to select the COM port where the N-Tech USB DMX Pro device is located. In the case of this computer, there's only one COM port, but on some computers there's several. There might be COM 3, which might correspond to a modem or things like that. So you could select the COM port here. Once you've selected it and the N-Tech device is connected, you could test the connection by pressing this button here. This will tell you the firmware that's loaded into the N-Tech. It'll tell you the serial number of the device and so forth. So once we know that it's working, you can see the DMX input settings here. What you can do is you can specify the starting channel number for DMX here, and you can see the channel assignment that Quickshow uses here. So for example, Quickshow channel 1 assigned to DMX channel 1 is what we call the access channel. That means that you have to have this DMX channel above 31 in order for Quickshow to operate with DMX. That's done for safety reasons. Each one of the channels is here, and when you click on it, you can get information right down here on how the DMX channel values apply. So for example, in this zoom channel, channel 6, a value of 0 makes 0 size, a value of 255 gives full size. And you can click on each one of these to get information on how the DMX channel values will influence this particular aspect. The channel number here shows you the channel number that will apply to Quickshow, including this DMX channel here. So for example, if we start at DMX channel 16, all of these channels change as well to let us know that, okay, now channel 16 is the access channel, channel 20 is the fade, channel 23 Y size, and so forth. So that's DMX input. Really pretty simple. Just connect the N-Tech device, select DMX input, specify your starting channel number, and then use this channel assignment within your DMX lighting controller to control Quickshow. For DMX output, it's a little bit different. You click this button here, enable DMX output. Then we come over here to this tab here. We have DMX output settings. The most important one here is the number of channels, and this corresponds to the number of channels that Quickshow will be sending out, and thus that you have control over. If you're just doing some small stuff, just a few lights or a fog machine, you can leave this with a low number of channels. If you're doing something very elaborate, you can go all the way up to 512 channels here. So once we have DMX selected for output, and we've set up the number of channels that we want to control, click OK, and you'll notice that we have this new tab down here called Quick DMX. This is used for DMX output. When you click on this Quick DMX tab, what you see is a number of DMX sliders. This is really just like the old DMX moving light boards, the old DMX dimmer boards that have a lot of sliders. Normally you can only see a limited number of sliders on the screen at any one time. Right now we're showing 17 sliders, but since I specified that I wanted 512 channels, what we see is that by moving this slider here, we can see all 512 sliders if we want. I'm going to leave that back over there. And so the Quick DMX feature of Quickshow works in a manner that's very similar to the Quick Targets feature. With Quick Targets, you specify what you want to happen and give it a number of steps. So for example, if we want to create a 4-step sequence, we could just add a step there, add another step, another color, another step, another color. So now we have a 4-step sequence here which we can play and show it now if we want. The Quick DMX feature works in a very similar manner. Just like with Quick Targets, we can specify a single beam position if we want to, just a single step. We can also do that with Quick DMX. So with Quick DMX we have this lighting board here with the channels that we can move up and down. We'll click on Show It Now, which will enable DMX output to work immediately as I'm moving these sliders. I have this dimmer pack that's the NTEC is connected to, so that you'll be able to see that as I move these sliders and as I have Show It Now on, the output from the Quick DMX feature is clearly controlling the output from the dimmer pack. This is just a 6-channel dimmer pack just for the purpose of illustrating this tool, but it's pretty simple to understand that as you move the sliders, the channels on the dimmer pack change to correspond with the sliders. So if we have a fog machine, and if we just want to turn it on, and let's say that the fog machine is on channel 1, what we could do is simply move this up to 255, and then let's say we just drag and drop this to a Q, and we can right click and go to Q properties and then change this name to fog on, let's say. So now we have this fog cue, and whenever we click it, we will activate the DMX output and be able to enable that fog machine just like that. When we click it again, if we're in toggle mode, it will turn the fog machine off. So this is an easy way to add a fog machine controlling cue, just as we can with the Quick Targets feature. We can create a sequence of events here. So for example, I've got this 6-channel DMX dimmer pack, and what we could do is we can make a sequence, kind of like a light sequence here. So let's say in the first step I just want light number 1 on. I'll add a step, and you can see the steps show up over here. We could say on step number 2 I want channel value 2 to be full value. I'll add another step. Step number 3 I want channel 3 to be at full. Add another step. Step number 4 I want channel 4 to be full, and we'll just do this for all of the lights there, so we have a 6-step sequence operating our 6 lights. Just as with the Quick Targets, we can click each one of the steps down in here and see what that step does. You can access the other steps with the computer keyboard here. You'll notice that we can only fit about 3 or 4 actual steps in the view here, depending on how wide your monitor is, but we can access the other steps just by using the computer keyboard. So just the left and right arrow keys on the computer keyboard. So what we can see is that I've made a 6-step sequence, and I'll click play, and you can see the 6-step sequence running. Just as with the Quick Targets feature, I've specified a step duration of 1 and have this little button pressed. This means beats. It corresponds with the metronome icon up there. So as the beat of the music speeds up, so will our sequence. And as the beat of the music slows down, so will our sequence. So if this is what we wanted, a 6-step sequence to go exactly to the beat of the music, this is how you would do that. And just like everything else in Quickshow, if we get it looking like we want, we can simply drag and drop this to the queue, and anytime we want to activate that, we just click on it and we activate our 6-step sequence like that. So let's go back here to the Quick DMX to learn a little bit more about this. If we don't want this sequence to be based on beats but rather based on time, we can specify this button here. So now each step is going to take 1 second. I can say, okay, I really want each step to take 3 seconds just by putting a 3 in there. So now each step will be there for 3 seconds. I'll just go ahead and click Show It Now so that we can see this is changing every 3 seconds. So that's how you specify beats or time in terms of the sequence. We'll go back to beats and back to 1 just because that's an easy thing to look at. And I'll press stop here, which will simply allow me to take a look at the steps one by one. If we want to delete steps, we can just simply click on the X button here and it will remove that step. And we can also insert steps as well. Couple more things. Within this menu here, we can make those sliders wider, perhaps easier to control. And for a small number of channels, definitely worthwhile thing to do. Or we can make those sliders more narrow. So if we have a large number of channels that we're trying to control, that will help. Let's make that wider again. And another thing that we can do is specify a name for each one of these things. This could be important so that we understand what DMX channel controls what operation. So, for example, if I just had a fog machine, if I right-click here, I can specify a name and call this fog. And then we have the little label there, which will show us exactly what this slider does. So in this case, let's just change that. We'll say light 1 and light 2, and just do this for each light, just to illustrate that each one of these can have a name. So we don't really have to remember these. All we have to do is put these in once and they'll always be there. Another thing that we can do is change the color of the sliders. So if I right click on the slider, I get these colors here, and I can say, okay, well, I really want, if this is the fogger here, actually what we'll do is go here to 7, we'll right click, we'll pretend that we got the fogger on 7. And let's say we want the fog to be represented by the color red. So now anytime that slider is used, you'll see that red color there. And so what this helps us to do is it helps us to group the sliders. We say, okay, all of these are blue, so that all of these correspond to one thing. This is red, it corresponds to another. We can have sliders out here be different colors, green, yellow, and so forth, that will correspond to other devices. It could be another lighting fixture, it could be something else out here. So we can control the color of the sliders to help us to understand how channels are grouped together. We can name channels down here just by right-clicking. So it's pretty easy to use, pretty easy to understand. So you see that as I'm moving the slider, you can see the value here starts off low and green, and as the numbers get higher, they get more yellowish, and finally when you get all the way to 255, it turns red. Just to help you to visualize that a little bit more clearly, we can right-click here and just enter a number directly, if we want to go directly to a number like that. So in case we know exactly what value we want a channel to be in. We can just type it in directly. So we've talked about creating DMX sequences, dragging and dropping, renaming channels, recolorizing sliders, and so forth. I'll show you a few other things that you could do as well. One of the things that we notice about this sequence is that it's really pretty snappy. We got channel 1 on, and then immediately channel 2 on, and then immediately channel 3 on, and so forth. For lights and for certain types of applications, we would really want a smoother response. And in that case, what we could do is we could specify that we want smooth responses for some channels simply by right-clicking in the slider, and if you choose Use Smooth Change, then from that point forward, this channel will always use a smooth change. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do that for each of the channels that correspond to the lighting dimmer pack here, and I'll be able to show you the result. So if I click on the play button now what we see is that the channels are changing much more smoothly, and they're not just snapping from value to value. Certain lighting fixtures have control channels. These are channels that will turn the light on and turn the fixture off and reset various parameters. For those kind of operations, you definitely would not want to use the smooth change, and that's why we have this stepped change operation. So for certain channels, when you want to go immediately right to a value like that on a step, what we can do is we'll just do that. So you'll be able to see that this channel number 8 here visualizes this little blue line there. In fact, we'll change that. We'll make that blue, maybe yellow. So that'll be easier to understand. You'll be able to see that when that goes directly to 128, and this is the yellow channel, you see that it's visualized there as a yellow line on step 1. So as I play this, you see that that channel number 8, snaps on and off, whereas these dimmer pack channels go through this smooth change. We can visualize these channel values as we are right now in the form of these sliders. Another way to visualize these channels is in the form of a spreadsheet. So here we can see the step 1, step 2, step 3, and we can see the channel values at each step. So this may be an easier way for us to visualize, and we can change this very easily with this slider out here. So if we want to change this in step 2, instead of going from 128 to 0, we might want this to go from 128 to 255 to 0. So this is just another way of visualizing the channels. Quickshow offers yet another way to visualize the channels, which is like this. So here we could see our steps down here, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5, step 6, and you can see this kind of waveform of what's going to happen throughout those steps. Light number 3 starts to ramp up in between step 2 and step 3, gets to full brightness on step 3, and then starts to ramp back down at step 4. When we have step changes, you can see that this becomes more square wave looking. So this gives you a way of visualizing and perhaps controlling this in a different way, where you can view it in the form of a waveform instead of viewing it in the form of just a bunch of sliders. The sliders can only show you what's going to happen at that particular step. The spreadsheet can show you much more readily what happens at multiple steps, and the waveform view is yet another way of showing what will happen to that channel in time. So we have three different ways of visualizing the information here. Just as with everything else with Quickshow, we get it looking like we want. We can just drag and drop it to a queue, and it's there anytime we want it. And just like everything else with Quickshow, when we want to edit this, let's say we want to edit this simple one here that simply turned the fog machine on, you just drag and drop this down to this area here. The black arrows indicate which tool should be used to edit that. When we drop it on there, then that's loaded into there. And we can see that for this one it was just channel 1 that was high. If we drag and drop this one back there, you can see that this has more steps and a much more complex behavior